Cannabis is not merely a plant. It's a test one that most people are failing, not because of the plant itself, but because of how they approach it. For decades, society has argued over whether cannabis is medicine or menace, sacred or sinful, a tool for spiritual awakening or simply a crutch for escape. But all of these arguments miss the point. The plant doesn't conform to anyone's belief systems. It doesn't bend to labels. What it truly does is amplify what's already within a person, and that's exactly what makes it so powerful and dangerous. In ancient traditions, cannabis was never a casual pastime. It was a sacred portal, approached with reverence and used only by those who were spiritually prepared, not to decorate the ego, but to dissolve it. It was never meant to entertain, it was meant to transform. Shamans, mystics, and seekers used cannabis not to escape reality, but to meet it fully. No distractions, no filters. In ancient India, it was offered to Shiva, the god of transformation, the god who destroys illusion. His devotees didn't smoke to get high, they smoked to die to the ego, to see through the illusions of the self. The chillum wasn't a novelty, it was a sacrament. In Taoist alchemy, cannabis was combined with other herbs in intricate spiritual rituals, used to refine inner energy and cultivate silence and visionary perception. It was believed to either sharpen spiritual insight or completely destabilize the life force, depending entirely on the user's internal state. To those who were unprepared, cannabis was not a gift, it was a test. In Sufi traditions, hashish was used sparingly in rituals designed to dissolve the individual ego into divine presence. But even then, it was controversial. Poets like Rumi warned of intoxication that mimicked enlightenment but left the soul unchanged. In their eyes, cannabis could only be sacred if it stripped away false identity, not if it elevated it. Even among the Rastafari, where cannabis is honored as God, the healing of the nations, it is not used frivolously. It's blessed before use. It's smoked during reasoning sessions, spiritual dialogues with divine intent. It's woven into prayer, music, and communal reflection. It's not about getting high, it's about getting aligned. In those sacred contexts, cannabis doesn't serve as an escape, it becomes a tool to remember divinity, not to forget the world. But in the modern world, cannabis has lost its container. What was once a ritual has become routine, sold in vending machines, smoked between texts, turned into content, marketed like lifestyle candy. The sacred has been made into spectacle, yet the plant itself hasn't changed. What's changed is the approach. And without preparation, without ritual, without reverence, cannabis loses its compass. The ceremony is gone, and all that's left is sensation. And sensation without meaning leads to indulgence. The danger isn't in the plant, it's in the unprepared user. Cannabis doesn't offer consistency, it offers magnification. If you're centered, it deepens your clarity. If you're fragmented, it intensifies your confusion. People don't realize they're stepping into a temple with muddy feet, and then they're surprised when all they see are shadows. And this isn't just poetic metaphor, it's psychological, spiritual, energetic reality. Ancient hermetic and mystical traditions held knowledge about this plant that modern users have forgotten or ignored. They understood that before cannabis was inhaled, there had to be cleansing, physical fasting, emotional clearing, spiritual grounding. Not because of superstition, but because they understood that the mind must be stable before it's expanded. Cannabis was never meant to make you feel better. It was meant to make you see. And that's the part no one likes to talk about. When people feel paranoia or anxiety after smoking, they assume it's a bad strain, wrong dosage, or a chemical imbalance. But what if it's none of those things? What if that fear, that discomfort, is the exact purpose of the plant? Carl Jung called it the shadow, the rejected, unacknowledged parts of your psyche. Not evil, but uncomfortable. Cannabis doesn't create that discomfort, it reveals it. It doesn't invent trauma, it amplifies it, like a speaker doesn't create music, it just plays what's already on the track. And for most people, that track is filled with unprocessed pain. That's why it can feel terrifying. Cannabis, in this light, isn't malfunctioning, it's working. It's just showing you what you've been avoiding. And our culture is not equipped to handle that. There are no elders guiding you through it, no sacred circle, no rituals of containment, just a person alone in a room, trying to suppress a spiritual awakening they weren't ready for. The ego begins to dissolve, the filters crack, and it feels like panic. But what's really happening is exposure, the sacred exposure, of everything you've hidden from yourself. This is why esoteric traditions approached altered states with extreme care. Psychic self-defense literature warns of heightened sensitivity after using substances. Like cannabis, your energetic body becomes more porous, more exposed. That's why things come rushing to the surface. Not just memories, but energy, emotion, influence. If your system is chaotic, the plant doesn't fix it. It turns up the volume. And what happens after that is entirely up to you. You can reflect, or you can run. But either way, you can't unsee what's been shown. People often misunderstand the purpose of these experiences. They think they're supposed to feel good, but feeling good isn't always the path to healing. Real healing is messy. Real healing involves facing parts of yourself you'd rather not. That's why cannabis is not just powerful, it's dangerous when used without preparation. Not physically dangerous, but spiritually destabilizing. It can leave people more fragmented, more sensitive, more confused. Not because it's bad, but because they entered a sacred space unprepared. And this brings us to a subtle trap, one of the biggest illusions in the modern spiritual movement. Confusing sensation with transformation. Cannabis makes you feel more. Music sounds deeper. Thoughts seem profound. Synchronicities pop up everywhere. You feel connected, open, inspired. But are you actually changing? Are you integrating the insights? Or are you just chasing the high? Because feeling expanded is not the same as being transformed. Seeing a vision is not the same as living its message. You may journal beautiful thoughts, speak with poetic insight, and feel elevated, but if your life stays the same, it's not awakening, it's entertainment. It's a simulation of growth, not actual growth. That's what ancient mystics called spiritual inflation, a puffed-up sense of progress based on fleeting states of mind. You become attached to the sensation of depth, without developing the capacity to embody it. And this is the great danger, not the plant, but what the plant can seduce you into believing. You begin to think you've arrived when really, you've just glimpsed something. And glimpsing is not knowing. Glimpsing is the beginning. But if you stay there chasing the high, idolizing the experience, you never walk the path. You never return with wisdom. You get stuck in the doorway, and the longer you linger in that space, the harder it is to know whether what you're feeling is truth or just emotional stimulation. Cannabis touches more than your mind. It interacts with your subtle body, the invisible network of energies that shape your perception, your emotions, and your spiritual clarity. If your subtle body is unclean, cannabis doesn't clean it. It just turns on the light. It makes the noise louder. So instead of harmony, you get distortion. Instead of clarity, you get confusion. You feel more, but understand less. This is why traditions emphasize energetic hygiene. Just like physical hygiene requires bathing, spiritual hygiene requires preparation. Fasting, chanting, prayer, silence, these weren't optional extras. They were mandatory rituals that tuned your inner system. Without them, cannabis amplifies the static. And the longer you sit in that static, the more it dulls your sensitivity, until the high becomes a fog, a comfortable fog, but one that prevents real change. And that's the final tragedy. People begin to confuse numbness with peace. They start believing that dullness is healing. But healing is not the absence of pain, it's the emergence of power. Cannabis doesn't give you that. It gives you access. Access to yourself, to your energy, to your patterns. What you do with that access is everything. If you're grounded, it can sharpen your intuition, deepen your presence, and awaken your spirit. But if you're not, it can unravel you, not because the plant is cruel, but because it's honest. The plant hasn't lost its power. We've lost the way we hold it. We've stripped it of reverence, and in doing so, we've lost our ability to truly receive what it has to offer. Cannabis is not a toy, it's not a trend, it's a test. And like any sacred teacher, it gives you exactly what you're ready to see, whether or not you're ready for it. The ritual always shaped the experience. Ceremony wasn't decoration, it was the container that held the power, that directed it, that made it meaningful. In the ancient world, nothing sacred was consumed casually. The act of using a plant, like cannabis, required intention, preparation, and a readiness to meet what it would reveal. It was never just about consumption, it was communion. But modern culture doesn't have patience for that. Ritual takes time. It demands discipline. It requires humility, and we live in a world built on convenience. So instead of honoring the depth, cannabis was stripped from its roots, cleaned up for mass consumption, and rebranded for a market that values appearance over substance. Now it's wrapped in smooth packaging, advertised by influencers, sold in dispensaries like a vitamin, with promises that it will simply make you feel better. The mystery, the mirrors, the shadows, it's all erased. What remains is aesthetic. Mood boards and pastel packaging with vague references to mindfulness, but none of the depth, none of the confrontation. This transformation turns something powerful into something passive. People light up while watching shows that hypnotize them into passivity. They scroll through endless noise while their nervous systems are already overstimulated. There's no circle of wisdom, no chant to ground the energy, no silence to receive the plant's message. It's just layers of distraction stacked on top of each other. In that chaos, cannabis no longer sharpens, it dulls. It becomes fog, not fire. It sedates rather than awakens. Even at so-called spiritual festivals, where incense burns and music plays, the plant is often just background noise. The ritual is for show. The experience is curated, not cultivated. The depth is lost beneath layers of aesthetics and performance. But cannabis has no use for performance. Its essence is untamed, raw, and ancient. It doesn't care about your branding or your hashtags. It cares only about your intention. Without reverence, without a proper vessel, its energy has nowhere to go. It spills into everything: your wounds, your patterns, your restlessness. It amplifies whatever is unresolved. That's why two people can smoke the same strain and have completely different experiences. It's not about the plant, it's about the person holding it. When ritual was stripped away, so was the structure that once made cannabis sacred. What remains now is an illusion of healing, a spiritual costume that offers sensation but rarely transformation. And yet, the plant hasn't changed. What's changed is our readiness, our respect, our way of holding it. The ritual was never for the gods. It was for us. It was how we cleansed ourselves, how we readied our minds, our hearts, and our energy to meet what the plant would show. Without that, we mistake discomfort for failure and insight for entertainment. We get lost, not because the plant betrayed us, but because we walked in unprepared. One of the most dangerous modern myths is the idea that good intentions are enough. That if you mean well, if your curiosity is sincere, the plant will guide you safely. But cannabis doesn't respond to intention. It responds to energy, to clarity, to readiness. It's not impressed by your wishful thinking. Many seekers light up to feel calm or creative, to soften the pressure of life. But they forget the plant isn't a peace giver, it's a revealer. It shows whether peace was already there or not. If you're filled with chaos, it will show you chaos. If you're aligned, it can deepen that alignment. But the plant itself doesn't create, it reflects. When used with discernment, cannabis can be a powerful spiritual ally. It can illuminate patterns, expose narratives, and offer a glimpse of life beyond the ego. But none of that happens because of the plant alone. It happens because of who you are when you meet it. Without structure, the experience becomes slippery. Without reflection, the insight dissolves. Without grounding, the opening can quickly collapse into fragmentation. That's why ancient traditions used cannabis within larger systems of spiritual hygiene practices like fasting, silence, breathwork, chanting. These weren't decorative, they were essential. They cleared the vessel, they tuned a nervous system, they made the field stable so the plant could do its work. The modern equivalent doesn't require a temple or a guru. You can light a candle, sit on the earth, turn off your phone, close your eyes, breathe, listen, let the plant lead you inward. Write what comes, reflect, integrate. Let the experience change how you show up, how you move through life, how you speak, how you love. That's the real alchemy. It's not about what you sit, it's about how you live afterward. Without integration, cannabis becomes just another form of spiritual entertainment. The high becomes a habit. The plant becomes part of your identity. You begin to think you need it to feel whole. But that's not a spiritual path, it's dependency. Not chemical, but existential. You forget that the plant was only ever a mirror. The depth was yours. It always was. The plant simply made it visible. The real journey begins when you can access that depth without any substance. You were never meant to live inside the high. You were meant to return from it, bringing with you a deeper presence, a renewed awareness. The goal was never the vision, it was the transformation. Can you remain kind when the euphoria fades? Can you stay grounded in conflict, in boredom, in ordinary life? That's the test. That's the work. Cannabis can help you see, but it can't help you walk. That part is always yours. And cannabis was never meant to be a solo experience. Across cultures, traditions, and centuries, it was nearly always used communally. Not because people couldn't go deep alone, but because those who respected the plant knew that power without containment is dangerous. Insight without reflection is unreliable. The plant may open you, but it's the community that holds you. In Rastafari reasoning sessions, cannabis is smoked in sacred space. Scripture is read, wisdom is shared, chanting rises. Silence is respected, the herb moves clockwise, following the rhythm of time and sacred energy. No one uses the plant to escape, they use it to align. It's the same principle across other indigenous traditions. Whether it's ayahuasca in the Amazon or tobacco in African diaspora ceremonies, the substances are only used within a container, a song, a prayer, a circle. The experience isn't private, it belongs to the community. You are never alone, even when your eyes are closed. The plant may show you something, but it's others who help you make sense of it. And when you return from the experience, you're held accountable. You can't pretend to be awakened if others can see your shadow. You can't fake progress when someone else is there to witness your pattern. The circle doesn't let you hide. Compare that with the modern version smoking alone. Staring at your phone, distracted and overstimulated, no grounding, no witness, no structure. Just another moment of isolation wrapped in illusion. And when the experience fragments you, there's no one to help you reintegrate, no one to ask you what you saw, no one to reflect it back to you. So you build a private religion around your insights. You start to think that solitude equals enlightenment. But real awakening is never selfish. It's shared. It asks for accountability. It asks you to live what you saw. And it all comes down to discernment. There comes a point when the novelty of altered states wears off. The visions become familiar. The messages start repeating themselves. That's when the real work begins, not with stronger doses or new rituals, but with deeper honesty. Because cannabis will show you beauty, but it will also show you illusion. You must be able to tell the difference. That's spiritual maturity. The ability to question even your most moving experiences and ask, was this truth Or just what? I wanted to feel. Cannabis speaks in images, in emotions, in riddles. If you're not grounded, you'll mistake metaphor for reality. You'll build belief systems out of poetic fragments. That's when ego sneaks in wearing spiritual clothes. You start quoting mystics and sounding wise, but nothing in your life changes. You begin to feel special, superior, you stop listening. And that's how the plant stops being a mirror and starts becoming a mask. Discernment is the inner blade that cuts through illusion. It's the ability to say, not every high is insight, not every feeling is fact. And sometimes the greatest spiritual act is knowing when to set the plant down. Not because it's evil, but because you've received what it came to show you, and now it's time to grow without it. Because cannabis is not the path, it's the compass. It points, it reflects, it directs, but it doesn't walk. You do. The plant can hold a mirror, but mirrors don't create. They don't move, they only show. If all you do is stare into the mirror, you forget to live, you forget to embody. And the ones who go deepest are the ones who learn to listen after the high fades, who sit in the silence, who make meaning not with words, but with action. The sacred isn't in the plant, it's in you. And the plant only reminded you of what you already carry. That stillness, it's yours. That clarity, it was always inside you. The plant just peeled back the noise long enough for you to remember. But remembering isn't enough. You have to become. The vision is only the start. The integration is the work. And that work isn't glamorous. It's not wrapped in mysticism or filtered through aesthetics. It's quiet. It's repetitive. It's real. It's in how you speak to the person who annoys you. It's in how you show up when no one is watching. That's what makes the experience sacred, not the ritual itself, but the life you build after. You were never supposed to depend on the teacher. You were meant to outgrow it. To turn your glimpses of truth into a steady light. To live with clarity even when the plant is no longer there. The plant becomes a legacy, not a crutch, but a chapter, not the fire, but the spark that helped you find your own flame. The goal was never the high, it was the return. The return to your own sacredness, your own wisdom, your own path. And now, the choice is yours. Will you keep chasing the light or will you become it?